Tired of trying to force me to follow the HOA rules, Karen decided to radicalize. She recruited 2 friends, dressed them up with fake badges, and showed up saying that I needed to leave my house immediately. But when I revealed my identity, they panicked. The morning was calm, the kind of quiet day that usually meant an afternoon full of problems. As the town sheriff, I was used to the routine. It always started without any major events, until someone decided to test the law's patience. But I didn't expect trouble to come knocking on my door that morning. Literally. The sound was dry, insistent, as if someone was about to knock down the entrance to my house. I walked over with the calm of someone who has seen it all and opened the door to find 2 men in suits, wearing shiny badges on their chests. They tried to look professional, but failed the moment they opened their mouths. "You are being detained for non-compliance with HOA rules." They both looked at me with a mixture of exaggerated confidence and poorly disguised nervousness. The one on the right was holding a clipboard, as if it were an official warrant, while the one on the left seemed to be trying harder to look more threatening than he really was. Before answering, I took a quick look at the street, and that's when I saw who was behind this antics. The woman was standing on the other side of the sidewalk, arms crossed, watching the scene with a satisfied smile, as if she'd just made the best move of her game. Over the past few months, she had tried to force me to follow the HOA rules in every way possible. Formal letters, notifications in my inbox, veiled threats about how things would be easier if everyone collaborated with the community. Since all that failed, she was now trying to intimidate me with fake police officers. Her problem? She chose the worst possible target. I crossed my arms, analyzing the 2 men from top to bottom. Their suits were cheap, their badges had an artificial shine, and their behavior didn't match that of real police officers. What exactly is the charge? The man on the right sniffed, flipped through the pages of the clipboard as if he were reading something important, and then announced in the best voice of fake authority he could muster, "You have violated the community's safety guidelines, and, by order of the HOA president, are to be removed immediately for clarification." I almost laughed. Was that it? An arrest based on HOA rules? The 2 of them waited for my reaction, probably counting on me to simply bow my head and follow them without question. But it didn't work that way. The woman across the street was restless. Her smile began to falter, her impatience taking over as she waited for me to do what any other resident terrorized by the HOA would do. Only this story wouldn't have the ending she'd hoped for. "Okay," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I just need to see your credentials before I accompany you." The air around us changed. The man on the left became tense. The man on the right swallowed, holding the fake badge hesitantly, as if trying to decide whether or not to insist on the fake. The woman across the street stiffened. That was the moment everything fell apart. She had spent months trying to force me to follow her rules. Now she was the one watching her plan crumble before her very eyes. The silence between us lasted only a few seconds, but it was long enough to see the panic growing in both men's eyes. The weight of what they were doing began to become clear to them. The woman across the street moved restlessly, crossing her arms as if she could hide inside herself. She realized that something had gone wrong. The man on the left tried to hold his pose. He puffed out his chest and tapped his fake badge, as if that would give the farce more credibility. His problem? The more someone tries to look like an authority, the less likely they really are. The man on the right, on the other hand, began to sweat. His hands were shaking slightly, and he looked away as if he was making mental calculations about the best way to get out of the situation without being handcuffed. I took the fake document he handed me and examined it leisurely. The plastic card had a generic coat of arms printed on it, with no official information, just a name and a makeshift title. Nothing there was real. I looked at them both and spoke calmly. "Where were you sent from?" The man on the left hesitated for a second before answering. "We're part of the HOA's security unit." HOA security unit. That was so ridiculous that it was almost worth waking up early for. The woman pressed her lips together, trying to maintain her posture, but it was clear that her confidence was beginning to crumble. The most interesting thing about dealing with criminals is that they always believe they're going to get away with it until the last second. They don't think they'll be caught. They don't think anyone will really question them. But when that happens, fear comes quickly. I took a deep breath, put the fake document in my pocket, and looked directly at the two men. "That's funny," I said, "because I'm the sheriff of this town, and I've never heard of this unit before." The impact of those words was immediate. The man on the right swallowed so hard that he could be heard. The man on the left, who had been trying to maintain his confidence, lost all color in his face. The woman on the sidewalk widened her eyes and took an involuntary step backwards. The realization hit. They had just tried to arrest the town's own sheriff with an amateurish stunt. None of them knew what to do. The one on the left looked at the woman as if waiting for some instruction, but she could no longer hide the panic on her face. They both began to take slow steps backwards, as if they were considering simply walking away and pretending that nothing had happened. But this wasn't the kind of situation that could be resolved by a clumsy escape. I took the phone out of my pocket and dialed calmly. "This is the sheriff. I need a vehicle at my address. I have two individuals trying to pass themselves off as officers of the law." The man on the right lost all composure. Nervousness turned to desperation. The woman finally exploded. "You can't do this!" Her voice came out more shrill than she probably intended. The look in her eyes, which had previously been filled with arrogance, was now full of disbelief, as if, somehow, she still thought she could get away with it. Her problem? The law didn't work the way she wanted it to. The police car arrived a few minutes later. The two fake police officers froze in place, realizing that there was no way out. The real officers got out of the car and walked towards me. Their gaze quickly passed over the two men in suits, and their expression turned serious on the spot. They knew exactly what was going on. The interrogation was about to begin. The car's red and blue lights cut across the street, reflecting in the windows of the houses. The silence in the neighborhood was absolute. Everyone was paying attention. The woman who had orchestrated it all stood motionless, her eyes wide, as if her brain was spinning at high speed, trying to find a way out. But there was no way out. The two fake policemen were pale. The one on the right was visibly shaking, while the one on the left was still trying to hold his pose, but his confidence had completely evaporated. The real officers got out of the car with the calm of someone who has seen this kind of stunt before. As soon as they approached, they quickly analyzed the two men, as if they had already realized that they were fakes at first glance. One of the policemen gave me a discreet look, as if to ask if I wanted to lead them on, or let them handle the situation. After all, this was still my territory. I decided it would be interesting to watch the imposters wind themselves up. The taller policeman approached the man on the left and held out his hand. "May I see your ID, sir?" The imposter remained static for a second. His gaze flicked between the policeman, the squad car, and me. He was desperately trying to find an answer, but anything he said would sink him even lower. The man on the right, seeing that his partner was unresponsive, tried to improvise. We've already shown you over there." He pointed at me. The policeman raised an eyebrow and looked in my direction. I took the fake badge that was still in my pocket and threw it in his hand. "This is what they showed me." The officer held the plastic card between his fingers, turned it from side to side, and then let out a short laugh, almost as if he couldn't believe the amateurishness. "Is this from a children's kit?" Both men's faces went even whiter. The woman on the sidewalk finally understood that she had made the mistake of her life. The neighbors began to come out onto the balcony, watching the situation unfold. Some whispered among themselves, others just crossed their arms, as if they were finally seeing justice done to someone they thought was untouchable. The second policeman picked up the radio and began a quick check. The time it took to confirm the obvious, neither of them was registered with any security agency, was short, but for them it must have seemed like an eternity. "So," said the policeman holding the fake badge, "do you want to tell me exactly what the intention of this operation was?" The man on the left opened his mouth and closed it. The man on the right began to sweat even more. But it was the woman who lost her temper first. "You don't understand." Her voice came out louder than it should have. "He's breaking up the neighborhood organization." The policemen slowly turned towards her. The look they gave her wasn't one of surprise, but of curiosity, as if they wanted to hear what else she had the courage to say. "He refuses to follow the rules," she continued, her voice full of indignation. "The HOA exists to maintain order. If he doesn't want to comply, then someone has to do something." The policeman held the radio close to his mouth and muttered something, probably calling for more reinforcements. Not for the two men, for her. The woman's reaction was immediate. She realized that she was going to be taken away, too. "You can't arrest me." The policeman pointed at the two men in suits, who now looked ready to faint. "These men tried to commit a crime in your name. This is the orchestration of a coup." Her mouth opened, then closed. Her brain was processing everything in real time. The police began to handcuff the two phonies. The one on the right begged to call a lawyer, while the one on the left simply bowed his head, accepting his fate. But no one there was more desperate than the woman. She truly believed that she would get away with it. Now, she was about to find out that reality didn't work like her HOA. The entire street watched the scene intently. The glare of the car lights reflected off the windows of the houses, painting everything in shades of red and blue. The noise of the police radios mixed with the whispers of the neighbors who were watching the end of the reign of terror of the woman who used the HOA as a shield for her thirst for power. The two fake policemen were already leaning against the car, handcuffed and completely defeated. Sweat dripped down one of their faces, while the other kept his head down, accepting that the plan had failed miserably. Neither of them even tried to argue. They knew that any wrong word would only sink them further. But the woman, she still wouldn't accept it. Her eyes were fixed on me, shining with hatred and despair. She had spent so long thinking she could run the neighborhood that now she couldn't deal with her own downfall. She wanted to scream. She wanted someone from the neighborhood to defend her. But there was no one. The neighbors who had once bowed their heads and followed her rules now stood by, watching as she sank alone. It was then that the policeman next to her grabbed the handcuffs and pulled her slightly towards the car. And that's where she broke down. "This is absurd," she shouted, her voice coming out louder than she had intended. It was the sound of someone realizing that they no longer had control of the situation. "I was just protecting the neighborhood." The policeman next to her didn't even blink. "You've dealt with these kinds of people before. People who think they're above the law, who believe that their own rules are more important than anything else." "Protecting you from what?" the policeman asked, without emotion. The woman opened her mouth to reply, but realized she had no justification. The whole neighborhood knew that she never protected anything. For years, she had used the HOA as a tool of control. Anyone who didn't follow her rules was punished. Anyone who tried to complain was silenced with veiled threats. She looked around for support. She hoped someone would say she was right, but the neighbors' faces were cold, full of satisfaction at finally seeing her face the consequences of her actions. It was the first time she really looked scared. The car's door was open. The policeman gave her a gentle push to get in, and she went without resistance. Not because she accepted her fate, but because she had nowhere else to run. The click of the door closing was the sound of the end of her era. The fake policemen were put in the next car, and soon the cars began to pull away, taking that woman's terror far away from the neighborhood. The neighbors remained still for a few seconds, absorbing the scene. Then a man, probably one of the oldest in the neighborhood, let out a sigh and muttered to himself, "It's about time." That was enough. The weight of the oppression that woman brought disappeared the moment she left. The next morning, there was a meeting among the villagers. Without the woman to manipulate them, the decision was quick and unanimous. The HOA was officially dissolved. The ridiculous fines ceased to exist. The veiled threats disappeared overnight. The neighborhood was finally free. And the irony? The woman who spent years trying to kick me out was the one who could never set foot in that neighborhood again. As for me, the next morning, I had my coffee on the balcony for the first time without having to worry about some absurd notification in the mailbox. Peace had finally returned. And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.